Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Asma Jahangir Sarwar and fellow panelists, respected ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to address such an august gathering, and especially that of the media, with I also happen to be interacting for some time. So it's very nice that such a large gathering of media people from all over the country are here, and especially to discuss the national agenda and how media can influence that, and especially in respect of policies. But before I proceed, I would like to I cannot hesitate but express how delighted we were and how pleased we were to listen to the good news that Asma Jahangir had become the president of the High Court. It's called the Supreme Court Bar Association. It was a good news that had come after a very long time, and it also shows that how moderate forces ultimately do triumph. And those who stand for righteousness and for justice, I think they ultimately prevail. So I think it's not just a question of her winning, it's a question also of certain triumph of certain forces we would like in Pakistan to succeed in their efforts. Now, starting off with my subject, which is national security and terrorism, I would like to start off with the fact that Pakistan, ever since its creation, has been India-centric as far as its perception of threat is concerned. And there have been valid reasons for that, because the fault lines that were drawn at the time of partition and the way that, the dispute, especially that of Kashmir, was left lingering as a result of the collapse of the British Empire, and which resulted in conflict at 2 wars with India, and also the lack of confidence between the two countries that emanated as a consequence of the large migration of forces. So I think that hostility continued till today. It continues and it lingers on, and it's like a cancer. And every policy that Pakistan pursued, whether it was a defense policy or whether it was a foreign policy, it had an Indian prism. We looked at everything from the Indian prism. Whether it was our alliance with the United States, starting from the CENTO, the CETO, the Afghan Jihad, and then the events of 9/11, then when we sided with them, all were focused on the fact that we wanted to countervail India as a result of, we thought, that by aligning ourselves with the United States, which was at that time a superpower turning into a hyperpower, and then now again reducing its power, but still we always thought that alliance with the United States, rightly or wrongly, was meant to countervail India. Of course, we are and we continue to pay a price for being a partner with a superpower, because the fingerprints of a superpower are obviously very heavy, and when they make mistakes, we also have to suffer along with them, but they can get away with their mistakes and we cannot. So that is a price we are paying, and we continue to pay for that. But that was the raison d'etre, or the rationale for having our alliance, essentially, apart from other reasons. I mean, I wouldn't say that this was the only reason, but I think this was one of the main reasons why we aligned ourselves with the United States, during the Cold War. Then, of course, our other policy of nuclearization of Pakistan was also a result of India-centric, because we became a receptive proliferator as a result of India being a nuclear country. We thought the only way we can countervail India's nuclear capability is by also developing. And when we went through the nuclear program, we had to suffer a lot. And as Shahid Zulfikar Ali Bhutto very rightly said, that if the country had to eat grass, we will still, be nuclear. And we had to eat grass in a way, well, I mean metaphorically, for quite some time. And we continue to, in a way, even today, targeted as a result, at least from the Western world, as a result of our nuclearization. So we paid a price for that, but essentially the reason why we nuclearized Pakistan, or Pakistan became a nuclear weapons state, was in order to countervail India. Now, we also followed the policy of supporting militants, whether these militants were the jihadi tanzeems, or whether it was the Taliban in Afghanistan. So we thought that, we could not match the Indian power, both economic, political, and military. So one of the ways of countervailing India was to sort of lock up its troops and lock up its forces by an asymmetric force, which are the militants. And apparently that policy at that time was considered to be wise and had its own rationale. But the fact is that it has recoiled on us, because it has destabilized the society. And it has had huge political and social impact, so a negative impact. So I think, and we are still, of course, one of the major reasons why I will begin talking about insurgency in a minute, but one of the major fallouts, negative fallouts, was the development of insurgency within Pakistan, both in the form of Taliban and the jihadi elements. The fourth is, of course, our policy in Afghanistan, in the sense that it also has an India-centric bearing. Now, all this, I'm trying to give you a background as to exactly how focused we were as far as India was concerned. But having said that, there is another major dynamic change as far as the world situation is concerned. There are two factors I want you to bear in mind. Yeah, please, if you don't mind. One of the major problems at the moment is that India has taken a very fast route in economic growth. And that is as a result of its shedding its previous economic policy of following the Hindu rate of growth. And by discarding that, since the 90s and since Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who was then the finance minister, started that program of liberalizing India's market, and also trying to interact and become globally, in a way, a player at the regional and at the global level, you have, things have come to the stage where India is an important world player. And you can see the amount of attraction that it draws because of its economic clout more than anything else, and because of the fact that it is one of the most attractive markets in the world. So I would say that you cannot now set aside, Pakistan cannot be oblivious to the fact that India has emerged as one of the most important players in Asia along with China. China may be far ahead of India at this point of time, but nonetheless, it's an extremely important player, and the power balance or the power disequilibrium between India and Pakistan has increased. And now, the other factor is that the Western world and everyone has a different perception about terrorism, in the sense that previously the resistance movements worldwide had a different connotation, but after the events of 9/11, it acquired another connotation, and that connotation was something completely different where they merged for their own reasons, expediency in a way. But whatever it be, the fact is that today there is no distinction as far as the Western world is concerned. And unfortunately, even as far as the non-Western world, whether it is Russia or whether it is China, they consider the same, that there is no difference as far as the movements for freedom or liberty are also paired now with terrorism. So there is also a qualitative change in the world's thinking, or at least the attitude. Even if the thinking remains the same, the fact is that their policies are determined by taking both as more or less the same and making no distinction. Now, having said that, what has happened is, as I just briefly remarked, that because of the policies of the past, that is, of supporting the militants, the Tanzimi jihadis, and also the Taliban. From the Taliban, we had the ideological reverse ideological sort of blowback or fallout. And from the Tanzims, jihadi Tanzims, we have a social and very major law and order situation. And now we face terrorism and insurgency, and especially terrorism, from multiple sources. And these multiple sources of terrorism are starting from Al-Qaeda. And Al-Qaeda, as you know, is a phenomena which really needs, it hardly has a defined sort of a structure. It is very amorphous in nature. It is more of an idea than an organization. But it has an impact, and it is global in nature. And it also has its remnants or roots in Pakistan because of the sanctuaries and because of the Afghan jihad. So what I have to say is that Al-Qaeda plays a certain role, and a very major role in a way globally, although for the time being and for the last few years, the effectiveness of Al-Qaeda in Pakistan has to a large extent been reduced. But even then, it remains one of the major threats that the world faces, and because of that, even if Pakistan does not face, it is somewhat involved and has to take care of that. Then I would rate the most potent and the most serious threat that Pakistan has is from the Tehreek-e-Taliban. Now, the Taliban of Pakistan are different phenomena from the Taliban of the Afghan Taliban. But nonetheless, and I think we have some very good experts like Yusuf Zai Saab and others sitting here in the media. But I would say that as far as the Pakistani Taliban are concerned, they are not a homogeneous or a monolithic unit. They are also different entities operating in different tribal, in the 7 units of the tribal belt. And even within certain areas, there are many militant groups. So it's not a monolithic, but they also align themselves and converge when their interests converge. And so what we find is that their power is multiplied at times, and sometimes they act individually. Then the Taliban cover, the Tehreek-e-Taliban cover is also used by criminals, by narcotic people, by smugglers, because then it's a sort of an umbrella which is used in order to commit acts of violence. Then you have these Tanzimi jihadis, and in that, of course, the most prominent is the Hizb al-Mujahideen, the Lashkar-e-Tayyiba, and the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi. And the Lashkar-e-Tayyiba and the Hizb al-Mujahideen are totally focused on Kashmir, but they also apparently, at least as far as the Western world is concerned, they now say that they also have linkages with Al-Qaeda. And in fact, the Americans and the Western world repeatedly says that Lashkar-e-Tayyiba is becoming a potent threat along with Al-Qaeda. And sometimes some of them even might be exaggerating, but they say that it has become even more than Al-Qaeda. But as far as we see it, at least from the Pakistani prism, and this has been always Pakistani's official stand, that Lashkar-e-Tayyiba and Hizbul Mujahideen and others are focused on Kashmir, and they have no role otherwise, at the regional or global level. But apart from that, there are also sectarian conflicts that have emerged in Pakistan due to several factors, which is, of course, economic deprivation, and this is poor governance, weak state structures, everything that, we can talk about and we are talking about since morning till evening. All these have really snowballed and created a situation where we have these, sectarian groups trying to advance their agenda and interpreting Islam in a very narrow, in a parochial manner, and then destroying the peaceful Islam, and interpreting Islam which is creating problems for the Muslims. Nowhere in the world Muslims are killing so many Muslims as in Pakistan. Nowhere are the, can you imagine what has happened, as a result of the policies that we have been pursuing, whether it be so or it's the poor leadership or it is whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is that that the ground situation today is that the Muslims or the Pakistanis are suffering enormously as a result of the various agendas of the militant groups, of the jihadi groups, of the Taliban, and so on. So there is no end to the misery that you every day hear and watch, visually every moment as to what they are really playing havoc and creating so much of death and destruction, and especially to the innocent people in Pakistan. Now, having said that, and probably you are aware of most of these things, what I have said, the fact of the matter is that in these circumstances, what sort of policies should Pakistan adopt in order to change the situation and to bring about a new direction to Pakistan? And that is what this conference is all about. So I have a feeling that, unless we do a very major revisit our policies that we have been following in the past, and instead of now crying over the fact that we pursued wrong policies, that is true, but I think we should look into the present and the future. And looking into the present and the future, what I feel is that we genuinely need another national policy, a national policy in which the military policy and the security policy is integrated. Previously, and for all these 63 years, it is the military which has formulated, the army has in a way formulated, or at least if not formulated, at least influenced to a very large extent, the defense and foreign policy of Pakistan as related to India, as related to Afghanistan, as related perhaps also to the US, although we have Inam Sahib, who is the most qualified to speak on that, and I don't want to, in front of him say things which may not be correct, but I'm sure he will correct me if I'm wrong. The fact of the matter is that the military has been, to a large extent, influencing policy, whereas, of course, the the Foreign Office has also been responsible for giving very good inputs into the policy, but whether those were really accepted or not is a different matter. So we have now a situation still where the army determines the policy. The question is, when you have a democratic framework, and if you have a policy formulation which is made by the military, then who is accountable? Because you are making policies and nobody is accountable. Because you participated in the Afghan jihad, and you know the consequences of that. So what about the accountability factor? So how can you blame any politician when they were not a party to that policy, but they have to, and the people of Pakistan have to suffer? So I think what we need an institutionalized decision making. So that is one of the major things that we have to do, is to bring about an institutionalized decision-making process. And that can be a political process, and that should be in the parliament, in the cabinet, in the defense committee of the cabinet, or if you want, you can create a national security council. So that, of course, is a matter of detail. But the fact is that you need an institutional decision-making process, which we lack. And then when you have the institutional decision-making process, in this you have the national security policy as being made by the civilians. And of course the army will give its very important input, and so would the Foreign Office, but essentially that. Nowadays, or for that matter for the last 63 years, the security policy has been the dominant policy, and everything else would have been was subservient. So in a way, we were looking at every problem through the security angle. Instead of being people-centric, we had a security-centric policy. Now, I think there is time that we have a people-centric policy. And for that people-centric policy, we need a very major shift in our thinking. And we should relate every policy that you make, whether it is good for the people of Pakistan or it's not good for the people of Pakistan. And of course, at least this is what I think, what the country needs today is surely peace externally and peace within. And for that, to bring about peace externally and peace internally, you need a very major shift and crossing the threshold of your mind and say that, we must make real efforts of finding a peace with India, peace with Afghanistan in a way, and trying to stabilize Afghanistan, and also have peace within Pakistan. And to have peace within Pakistan, I think we have to first look at Balochistan. The insurgency in Balochistan is one of the most challenging internal dilemmas that Pakistan faces. You cannot let it continue like this. We have to we have to own these people. What has happened in Pakistan is that we are not owning certain areas of Pakistan. And we have allowed these areas to be left, at the mercy of groups. And so we have to win back. And we have to win back the hearts and minds of the Baluchis. And by winning back the hearts and minds of the people of Balochistan, we'll win back the area, and we will be able to exercise control over that territory. Similarly, exactly the same thing applies to the tribal belt. We cannot possibly let our areas be sanctuaries for foreign elements to operate there. And if you lose sovereignty over your own territory, then obviously you have no right, or you at least find it very difficult to defend your sovereignty from external forces. So when the drones are attacking Pakistan, the Americans are using their drones to attack Pakistan, it becomes, although it's a violation of our sovereignty, but the fact of the matter is that they argue it out and say that in any case you don't have any control over your territory, and people are using your territory to launch attacks on us. Now, we can say that this is a consequence, and you should look at it in a historical context, but this is the same thing as saying that, we pursued policies that have gone awry, and now we have to correct them. So I think we need a lot of revisiting of our policies, owning those areas in which we have lost control, bringing them back, and it's not all that easy. As far as terrorism is concerned, there are many things which we can do in terms of prevention, in terms of intelligence, in terms of using more modern techniques in cooperating between the provinces and the center, but that is a matter of detail, and I'm not going to go into that. Similarly, when it comes to, but the real heart of the matter is that we have to change our policies as regards our external, countries are concerned, like India and Afghanistan and others, in a way without losing our dignity and sovereignty, and trying to see that how do we prioritize our policies, still maintaining and also ensuring that our national interests in the long term are not compromised, but ensuring that the people of Pakistan do get a better treatment than what they are getting, both from the government and from the insurgents and the militants who are playing havoc with their lives. I think with this, I'll conclude because there are several speakers today, and I'm sure there will be question and answers, and we'll be able to take them. Thank you.